Welcome to Not Rated Movie Nights, a branch of This Film Not Rated, which is a branch of the Drive-In Podcast Network. Today, we are continuing to try to not rate movies, but we're starting a sub-trend when we don't want to review the big movie of the week. Google it if you want. And we're going to continue to try and seek the objective truth of a movie and fail.
I'm particularly excited about this because it gives us a chance to go back and look at movies that maybe we want to talk about but never get the chance to. Some old favorites of ours.
But particularly horror classics.
Right. And this is a horror that got kind of almost a starter for me getting into horror. Like the real horror. Like, you know, you have movies like A Nightmare Before Christmas and Gremlins and, you know, those PG to PG-13 horror movies that you can watch as a kid, and it's kind of like an introductory. This is the first like hard horror movie that I got to see.
Ooh, what is it?
This time we're talking about Night of the Living Dead.
The original 1968.
Mm-hmm. Co-written and co-directed by George A. Romero and John Russo?
Jack Russo.
Jack Russo.
So Jack is sometimes a thing for John. Yeah, you're right.
And all Night of the Living Dead is a couple of people wanted to make a horror film. They had basically a shoestring budget for the time that it was in. And they just went out and made a horror movie.
I don't remember any filmmakers in the plot of Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, the plot of Night of the Living Dead. People are coming back from the dead, feeding on the flesh, and a group of wayward individuals from varying backgrounds find their way to the same house, and they have to fend off the flesh eaters for one night.
Mm-hmm. So you're ready to go into our gauntlet of objectivity, where you have to state nothing but facts about this movie and objectively tell the truth about its quality.
I guess so.
Is Night of the Living Dead a good movie or a bad movie?
Night of the Living Dead, I think, to this day, is considered a cult classic.
By who?
I would say just moviegoers in general.
General moviegoers. This still doesn't really answer the question of good or bad, though. So.
It is. I generally see it as a good movie.
So does 100% of people, so you're good to go. What was the best scene in the movie?
The best scene in the movie? Oh, God.
There actually is, I don't know if you'll be able to pull this out, but a small cheat you can do here where the commentators themselves on one of the commentary tracks of this release says that there is a shot that most people, to the creators of the film, cite as their favorite shot of the movie.
There are several things that I think of when I think of this movie. The standout one for me, and I say this because it's the only scene when I first watched this that I had to close my eyes during when I first watched it. It's when the daughter, who's at the bottom of the basement, you see her eating her dad's arm and then walk over and grab a shovel off the wall
and
stab the mom.
That's the one. That's the one that the whole world agrees. It's okay, so this is... It's not. There's a music box shot is the shot that they talked about.
Okay.
Like, it's weird. But that movie in this infamous TV special of 100 like horror movie moments like of all time of the scariest horror movie that like has influenced my movie watching for like 20 years since this thing aired. That is the scene that's on the list from Night of the Living Dead. Is the daughter killing the mother. You think about it. This predates The Shining. This predates The Exorcist. This is very likely the first of very many things. This is the first time zombies ate flesh on film. A lot of people cite it that way.
If you actually go back and watch the trailers for this movie, they will give the line, the scariest movie you've ever seen. And of course, this is like 6-7 years before The Exorcist, which was at that point the scariest movie that was ever made.
I mean, there is too much attention on that scene, that classic like looming with the gardening tool scene, for me to cut that out. So for me to buzz you out.
And it's the same thing with Psycho. It has the same effect where you don't see the shovel like stab into the mom. It's all off screen and you see like reaction shots. But that's it. You don't actually see in any of the gore.
Yeah. So, what should be cut from the movie?
What would I cut from the movie? I don't know if I would cut it, but I would like to see this ending to it. I would probably just, for curiosity's sake, cut out the ending where the people from the townspeople shoot the last surviving guy.
Yeah.
I would probably, if not cut, slightly change it.
You know what?
Fair enough.
I gotta say, there's too much that's iconic and meaningful and weighted behind that ending.
I actually agree, but that's the only thing that I could think of.
So, two moments in the movie that the directors talk about with the hiring. We should kick this off with the hiring of Dwayne Jones as Ben. It was never intentionally like a race casting thing,
right?
And yet, like almost infamously, they were driving with this movie in the trunk of their car on their way to its initial screening when they heard on the radio about Martin Luther King being assassinated.
Yeah.
So they knew the weight of what they were putting on film, and they knew that there were underlying tensions, but there's more to it than that. Dwayne Jones wasn't just the best actor for the character they wrote. The character they wrote was originally a rough and tumble trucker who matched the like bravado with Harry and was like kind of an asshole, it sounds like.
And you do get that with Dwayne Jones's performance as that character, but
see, I don't totally get that. And that was the two things that they pointed out. Dwayne Jones fought really hard to never be holding a gun, but then he did for the movie. He tried to fight really hard to have the scene removed where he hits Barbara.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like one of the few scenes that's left in.
He tried to get that removed?
Yes. It's one of the few scenes that's left in. And the reason why, from the creators' mouths, is we had to find a way to get her knocked out. So the scene where they hit her is one thing that they might agree could be cut from the movie if they found another solution to it.
Okay.
The other one, weirdly enough, is him smoking a cigarette. They're all debating with themselves whether or not the dude actually smoked in real life, and like after changing the image away from that like blue-collar trucker, it's like, did he really need to or not? Because he has it for like one shot and then doesn't have it afterwards.
I mean, I guess they didn't need it, but it was so common at the time. Like, I don't see the issue with it.
It's not that they said it's an issue, it's that it feels out of character. Button-up tie, like, you know.
Button-up tie, I mean, guy in the 60s, I would say they were smoking the most.
Okay. Well, hey.
This is like one of those like classic Halloween night horror movies that it's like, and it doesn't have to like, I say Halloween, but like almost any night I could watch this and be thoroughly entertained. But it's one of those horror movies that kind of perfectly fits the fall season. It kind of like with Halloween, where it fits the mood and the atmosphere almost to a T. Where it's one of those that I have to go back every year to watch. If not on Halloween night, then around Halloween.
For some reason lately, just because of COVID, every year I've been watching this movie kicking off the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but, you know, we watched it. Either you and I or my wife and I were watching it the day that riots kicked off in Atlanta over George Floyd. And felt like there was nothing we could do about it, and also we didn't realize that all of this was happening and was going to break out, and we just happened to be watching Night of the Living Dead, which in the middle of, like, a virus is spreading the nation, and that, like, it felt like the most poignant thing, you know, to be watching, but we all got distracted in the middle. You can't, no matter what the filmmakers say about it, you can't talk about Night of the Living Dead without acknowledging what it touches on in terms of race, civil rights, and
class issues as well.
It's just too part of the DNA of the choices they made on what happens to the characters in the movie. And that's, I think, part of the reason why this is so special, because it is simple. Contained to a house, survive the night, flesh-eating monsters are coming to get you, survive, that's it. It's not claustrophobic, though, it's relaxed. And then it's tense when it needs to be. And that's part of the reason why it just feels like, like you're inside and there's a storm outside.
It's incredibly bare bones. Like the movie itself is like, what, 70 minutes long, if that?
Yeah.
It's very short and very to the point.
But constantly, it has this underlayer of all of these different class, race, and social, think pieces going on. So your brain is active the entire time. The creators, they pointed out that there's a weird issue in the movie. Because they were just set dressing a house that they had rented from some people. And they needed the character to find lumber. And so he finds it in some kitchen cabinets. How many people do you know that keep lumber in their kitchen?
I can't think of any.
They said they were surprised that nobody ever called that out as an error, but I'm sitting here thinking, no, you know the Jaws thing? You earn the ending. When you shoot a helium tank, it would never explode, but your audience wants it to happen so badly by the time you get there that you earned it. I feel like instantly, with the creativity behind the monsters, the immediate iconography of the opening, and they're coming to get you, Barbara, and all these little things and pieces they put in place, I think people are terrified, and they're just looking for a solution, and they are just as relieved as Ben to find the lumber. So I don't even think I think the filmmakers just completely didn't realize how great what they were making was.
Yeah, by no means. Like you look at the special features on the Criterion discs that you have, and they will openly admit that they were flying by the seat of their pants. This was they had almost no budget. All the zombies that they got to be in the film, well, for one, they weren't even zombies.
Half of the behind-the-scenes crew were the featured zombies.
Yeah, and then the other half were just the townsfolk that they got to sign the waiver. And they said, okay, well, you're going to be playing a ghoul in this scene.
Eat some chocolate and chicken.
Yeah, and
that's a lot of the gore, the flesh that they were eating. It's like raw meats and chocolate syrup.
Fresh from a butcher, raw beef, raw intestines and liver. That was something I think that was very new at the time. I don't think anyone had the gall to film actual blood and viscera on film before.
Yeah, it's over top, and they themselves were even questioning whether or not squibs had been used in movies they remembered before then. It was new technology to that crew. I don't think it was the first time it was ever used, but you think of Night of the Living Dead as this black and white movie that has some scary elements but is tame. Yeah. But if you break down what it is you're actually looking at, it is so freaky. It's not just the one face at the top of the stairs. It's the whole movie.
Yeah. And going back to the whole wood thing that you're talking about and how it's deserved. George Romero breaks one of his core tenets of the rule of zombies right at the beginning of this film.
Does he?
Yeah, because the scary thing of the zombie is that, yes, they are weak and pretty much easy to kill if they're alone, but grouped together is when they're in danger. At the very beginning of the script, the guy says, okay, and now you kill him. When the zombie kills the brother, the guy said, okay, well, how's he going to do that? Because this is supposed to be when he's at his weakest. And one of the guys quoted George Romero as saying, well, fuck it, do it anyway. Because the point was to get them to the place.
Not just about killing the guy, but then smashing the rock through the window of his mother's car. They were gonna pay to replace the window, but then his mother dented and wrecked the car. And it's actually creative editing, when the car hits the tree, That's the real car damage that she got, like, in the middle of the thing. Anyways. But yeah, the dude chases a car. These zombies that are supposed to be slow-moving chases a car.
Right. And you don't think about it at the very beginning because it's still a new creature. You don't know what the rules are yet. So it's very easy to break those rules and have no one really notice until a rewatch. And even on rewatch, you don't even think about it.
I really don't. It actually feels that actor who performs the first on-screen zombie like that, he nailed it.
Oh, for sure.
Even, like, I absolutely buy that this guy typically would be very slow and not very strong. But because he has this, like, bloodlust,
yeah,
he, like, ramps up for a bit. It just works. Everything just works. It's like they were just throwing things together and everything just happened to fall into place.
Yep.
The music, just that.
Well, you know what that you know what that music is, right?
What?
It's just library music.
Is it?
George A. Romero and Jack Russo. They had a television a commercial and industrial film company where that they set up like 7-8 years earlier before this, where they just filmed commercials and industrial films for people. This is their first big thing that they use the techniques that they learned making those commercials and shorts in this film. And if you go back there, it's on the special features. It shows clips from the commercials that they use, and it's very much the same kind of techniques that you see in Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. I'm sure Martin from later on, you'll see a couple of tricks from there. But yeah, it's all it's all library music from, I think, a company called High Q Libraries or something, and they did it out of necessity because none of them knew how to actually score music. Like, this was all a motley crew of we're gonna do it ourselves type guys. None of them knew how to compose music, but they had that asset of the library music at their disposal. So George A. Romero, he just picked the stuff that he liked and implemented it.
So it's literally every layer of this whole thing is just driven by, like, a passion for a specific outcome, and then just accepting what you get.
Yeah.
But what they got happened to serve them insanely well. I feel like this movie is just always going to work.
Yeah.
And you know what? The only thing that I like better than watching this movie is watching it as a double feature with its remake. Which, the culture around the fact that the Night of the Living Dead has a remake from the 90s by Tom Savini is a testament to the subgenre, like, to the horror community's tolerance for things.
Yeah.
Because when you have other people go out and remake a classic, the world lights up on fire and they're all mad, like, why are you bothering to make this? If someone said they were going to remake Titanic tomorrow or Citizen Kane, a bunch of people would, be up in a fist fight.
Oh, for sure.
But Night of the Living Dead's remake is not only an entertaining movie on its own, but people allow both to exist, and the old retains its reputation while the other one also lives on as its own cult classic, and everyone's just like, yeah, everything's great. Like, the rights to this movie got so thrown up in the air that a whole separate series of sequels came out of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead had to be called Dawn of the Dead instead of Dawn of the Living Dead because a studio owned the rights to the title of this.
Yeah. Specifically, Jack Russo and George A. Romero had a falling out, and they had a rights spat where after they separated, Jack Russo maintained the Living Dead rights, while George A. Romero still got to use the Dead moniker, which is why we have that separated.
That I didn't realize it was the two of them because the two of them were just talking back and forth about the making of the movie in '94.
Wow.
So that's a very interesting interview with that context to it.
That's why when he had later releases, Jack Russo had final say on any new scenes that were edited in. So in a later release, you have an extra scene edited in where you see that initial zombie, the one that kills Barbara's brother. You see him rise from the dead during a funeral. And it's shot way later, so the guy looks way older. And it doesn't mesh well with editing.
And I think he also, when they colorized it, didn't he also have something to do with that?
Yeah, it was either him or Turner Classic at that point, because Turner was going through this.
Turner Classic.
Because Turner was going through a whole thing where they were colorizing old black and white movies. It was like this one.
I don't know a lot about. I know a bunch of people are like really pissed off about that whole era of Turner Classic movies, like colorizing black and white movies. But...
Yeah, George Lucas was a big advocate of not doing it.
Yeah. Ironic. Leave the original alone, says George Lucas.
The whole rights thing, like it's the whole rights thing is the whole reason why, for the longest time, you could just get this movie on any collection of 50 horror movies in one set. Like this is where, like that's how you first watched this, and this is like one of the rare movies that I got to see your first impression on, because you found this 50 horror movies in one pack thing at Walmart one time, and you saw that Night of the Living Dead was on it. You had never seen it before, so I got to see your first reaction at the very ending. Like, so so I got to be the asshole that time, whereas with me with the Mists, seeing Thomas Jane do what he does at the end, I got to see your reaction with the final shot of the black guy dying at the end after he lived through all the zombies and just gets killed by the villagers.
It's so dispassionate and cold, and it kicks off this whole thing of George Romero and his social commentary with these movies. And the Criterion release supposedly is the first release whose profits benefit George Romero's estate.
Yeah.
So that's the version to get if you're looking to own a copy of this movie.
Yep.
Because otherwise, the movie's been released forever. The reason you see Night of the Living Dead on playing in movies all the way up to last year's Halloween Ends, okay, is because their rights issues are so messy that it's basically been public domain. So every year, I think I'll continue to have some impulse to want to watch this movie and a couple of its sequels. But you know what? We're going to come back to some of the sequels another time.
Yep.
Do you have any final thoughts on Night of the Living Dead?
For as old as it is, and as cheesy and amateurish as the acting can be at times, because there are some bad performances, to be sure, in the movie, the core of what it is so true that it's such an easy watch that and it's one that I will always come back to.
Yeah, it's a horror classic, and we are This Film Not Rated, doing not rated movie nights. So we hope you like this. We hope this strikes a little bit of a chord with a couple of people. Remember, you can always reach us at TFNRCMEL on Twitter with your suggestions for what movie we cover next. Now, our plan, if there is no other input, is to continue to review on This Film Not Rated your big releases of this year. But in those weeks where there's just not something that we feel is like quite special enough, or we're too lazy to get ourselves out to the theater, we're going to continue to cover horror classics, probably continuing with Dawn of the Dead. So tell us what you think. Yell at us. Interact with us. We like y'all.
Yes, we do.
And you can find me on Twitter at HighContrastFLM.
And you can find me at on Twitter at 90sgamer407. You won't be able to see my face right now because my camera decided to jump off, but you'll be able to find me there.
They got to Curtis. So, yeah, remember, we're a branch of the Drive-In Podcast Network, and go check out what they have to do at MusicCityDrivein.com, and come back and see us next time, or watch any of our other videos, because we've done a bunch of these by now. Peace.